Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Upside Swings of a Draft podcast, the podcast, The High Ceiling. I'm your host, Bryce Hendricks, joined as always by the great Cooper Klein. And it's draft time, I guess. March is happening. The first weekend of March Madness has concluded. The Sweet 16 will be starting here soon. I don't want to spend too much time on that. I thought about asking, did you have any thoughts on the games? I don't know. They were fun to watch. I'm not sure there were really a lot of prospect takeaways other than, Tyler Tanner good, Alex Condon mid. I don't know where we're at with that. But before we get too into this draft, we're going to talk about Cameron Boozer, who is a really exciting guy. We wanted to start with him because I think we sort of assumed that he would be our number one, and I think we'll have a discussion about that. But before we get too into Boozer himself, Coop, my friend, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm doing even better because the Cougs are playing their best basketball of the whole season. So I'm a happy fella. I think this is also a really good discussion to have first because I think Boozer is like the most distinct of the consensus three top guys. I think we get to talk about how our philosophies changed a little bit, and then we kind of get to pair up the next two in like a grouping together, right? Mm-hmm. So I think it'll make for a really good discussion. And I'm really excited for this one because you've been taunting me about how this discussion is going to go for the last day. So,
yeah, no, I think there's a lot of interesting stuff to dive into with Boozer, including some comps, some BART queries. The nice thing about doing these pods is only one person is that we can really kind of get into the muck of it. We've said this for a while, but getting the guys right at the top of our board is the most important thing, right? It's great to have picked out the best, sixth men, seventh men on rosters, when you're like, hey, this is an undrafted free agent I like or whatever. It's a whole other thing to be able to pick the right superstar to build your team around. And we've made mistakes on this before. I had Paolo 1 in a draft. I had, I think in that same draft, I had AJ Griffin absurdly high, at 3 or something. I've been wrong plenty of times before. Now I feel like I've been right as well. Cade Cunningham, I thought was going to be this level of player, and it took a little bit of a circuitous route, but I think these top guys are the most important guys to get right. And so with Cam, I want to start with just kind of some basic underlying stats for him. Listed at 6'9", 250. He's a July 18th, 2007 birthday, which means he's 18 years old right now. He will turn 19 right around the time of the draft. That'll be a hell of a week for him, I believe, because the draft is usually early 20s in July. So he'll probably turn 19 and then get drafted within a week. This season, had a pretty darn good season, I would say. Averaged 22.4 points on 56.3, 39.8, 78.7 shooting splits. Grabbed 10.3 total rebounds, 4.2 assists, 1.5 steals, 0.6 blocks, 2.4 turnovers. Few kind of more advanced stats here. A 17.8 box plus minus. That's pretty good. 132.6 offensive rating. 30.3 usage, 61.8 effective field goal rate, 66.1 true shooting. So basically, he had the ball a lot, and he was really, really efficient. But that wasn't all. He also had a 26% assist rate with a 14.7% turnover rate, which means that he also passed a lot and was super efficient at that. Had a 1.7 assist, a turnover, just didn't turn the ball over very much. And then the athletic production, also pretty good. 2.1 block rate, 2.6 steal rate, 22.5 defensive rebound rate, 12.5 offensive rebound rate. All the kind of big things you look for there look really good. And then he also dunked 40 times. He was efficient around the rim. He made his threes, and he didn't take a completely insignificant amount of them, 6.6 per 100 possessions. Overall, just a super, super almost bulletproof stat profile. Coop, as you were looking through the stats purely, kind of how did you feel? I want to get just kind of your general opinion before we do some queries here and some number comps.
Yeah, I think I think the rebounding stuff, especially on top of his interior scoring. We'll talk about it when we get to comps. When you look at him compared to these top guys, there's not very many people who both grab as many offensive rebounds as he does and also score like insanely efficiently on the inside to such a ridiculous degree. And that's on top of the fact that he's like self-creating stuff to a pretty like decent degree. I mean, what was it? Only 41% of his at the rim attempts were assisted, which feels kind of ridiculous for a guy who scored so efficiently at that level and who isn't super vertical. Stats wise, I think the one thing that kind of keeps him from being bulletproof is that 2.1 block rate for someone who played so much on the interior. Not awful. It's not bad to any degree. We'll talk about it more when we get to the actual tape. But he's it kind of indicates that he's not as helpful around the rim as someone who kind of someone with his positional profile needs to be. The rest of the profile is incredible, though, and completely bulletproof to my eyes.
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, I think that it's hard to really poke holes in it from a statistical standpoint. Maybe you could say he didn't dunk a ton, like you said, the block rate. Like, there's definitely some things that when you see that he's 6'9", like point to maybe a little bit of below average vertical athleticism. But again, 65.4% on 312 close to is pretty darn good. I want to throw some queries at you, Coop, and then you can kind of. I know you have some interesting comps that you wanted to pull up too statistically. The first one I got. All of these are fairly simple. Assist rate greater than 25, free throw rate above 50, dunks made above 35. These are guys who are athletic but also pass and play enough with the ball to get to the line. Here are the numbers, or here are the guys. Cam Boozer, obviously, Ben Simmons, Royce White from Iowa State, and then a couple mid-major guys, Marcus Blackley from Vermont and Nathan Knight from William and Mary. You could maybe even call those low majors. You probably could. And so they're a little bit less interesting there. What stands out to me, of all five guys, Boozer has the lowest turnover rate by quite a bit, other than Nathan Knight. Nathan Knight's really the only other guy that's kind of close there. Does have the lowest assist rate, the second lowest free throw rate, and not really, just kind of in the morass of dunks, doesn't really pop out there, but was more efficient than all those guys. By the next was guy Nathan Knight, who again played at William and Mary, so much lower level, 4 true shooting percentage points below where Boozer was. What do you think? What do you think of that? Do you feel like that one points to anything interesting?
I think the Ben Simmons poll is really interesting because I think it kind of indicates, kind of his ideal positionality to some degree, right? Like you talk about, like, this is kind of the role, people kind of put, especially later in his career, Simmons into, where he's this DHO hub, and it's like every single time he's playing, it's like the Nets are going to give it to him at the top of the key, and he's too much of a predeterminer to actually do it. But I mean, being in any kind of a query with Simmons, especially college Simmons, and then early career Ben Simmons, who was still like an absolute beast unto himself, I think is really interesting. I don't know much about the other two names, but I think that kind of.
You know about Royce White and his feeling about planes, I believe.
I do know him, yes, but I don't know anything about his actual game. The thing that I kind of I really like is the low turnovers, because I think that he's actually like a really high value passer as we get more into the tape, and the fact that he keeps his turnovers down, like even compared to these other really high profile passers, is one of the little special bits about his game. So I do like that query there.
Yeah. So the other one that I think is really important, I did an offensive rebounding number one. I think it's less important, other than to note that he's just like way more valuable offensive player than all those guys, except for Michael Beasley. Basically, not a lot of players who pass and score as efficiently as Cam Boozer also get that level of offensive rebounds. I think that one's super important. This one is way more interesting. Super simple. Effective field goal rate above 60, 3-point attempts per 100 possessions above 5. Now, he took 6.6. So he does clear it comfortably. All the other guys in this query took way more than 6.6 3-point attempts for 100 possessions. Those are super interesting. Doug McDermott did this twice. Stephen Curry, and then a couple again, kind of mid-low major guys. Jake Stevens is the only other kind of bigger guy to do this. He was at Chattanooga a couple years ago. Corey Hawkins from UC Davis, Matt Morgan from Cornell, who I feel like Matt Morgan maybe got like a cup of coffee in the league. Maybe I'm wrong. And then Jack Karazinski from Bellarmine from last year, actually. Kind of interesting that he fits in a query with someone like Ben Simmons and also someone like Steph Curry. I think that's more than anything what I'm trying to get at here. But he's just a really, really unique and interesting offensive player, and I'm really excited to talk about it. The defense will be a whole completely separate part of the conversation, but the offense certainly fascinating. Coop, you have some stats you kind of wanted to bring up too. Why don't you do that? And then if you wanted to transition us to offense, feel free as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to look at primarily the player comps that Bart will kind of pull up, and some of the players that he's kind of most similar to. I think the most obvious one, and the guy who is the most like him by a huge margin, Cooper Flagg. We kind of obviously put Duke phenom from last year up against 6'8", two bigger forwards. You kind of compare the two. Boozer is much more efficient than Flagg as a scorer. I mean, it's 8 effective field goal percentage points and 7 true shooting points. And he's also just a far superior offensive rebounder. Flagg, love to get into that little short mid-range and try and get that, little bullshit, post up into the short mid-range. But other than that, I mean, pretty similar defensive rebounding profiles, similar assist to turnover. Boozer is just like a far more efficient interior player. And then Flagg is like this much more defensively skewed shot blocker, elite at digs, elite on defense, at every single spot on the floor. And some other interesting names. You have Kevin Love here at 4. And I think that's kind of a forbidden comp. I had someone last year I compared to Kevin Love, but I think that's always an interesting name. Michael Beasley. Marvin Bagley is kind of the evil one there, but I think a little bit undersized, kind of has to play as this offensive 4. I think they're very obviously different in a lot of ways, but Boozer can actually pass and dribble and do a lot of stuff. But I think that's kind of your nightmare scenario. You get the whole kind of scale of outcomes here from like Zion and Michael Beasley and Kevin Love at the top down to, is this guy just Marvin Bagley? Because he's not that level of athlete to keep up in the NBA.
Yeah, I mean, that's the like we said, the biggest hole statistically is that he just doesn't pop with like athletic production. It's not bad. He meets the thresholds, right? It's not like someone we'll talk about a little bit down the line, like a Keaton Wagler, where you're just like, oh shit, like, is this guy just like way too unathletic to actually play in the league? It's not to that level, but and I don't want to start with this on tape, but that is the question, right? And Boozer is not someone who is quite as bulletproof after I've done this deep dive as I kind of thought I would. I kind of thought I would feel he is. Not that he's not a great prospect, because I think he is, and I think we're gonna have an interesting discussion where my guess is we will end high on him, but maybe not as high as the people that are like all in. But he's definitely in that echelon of guys like the Cooper Flaggs, like maybe not quite the Wembys, but the Cades and those types of guys in this world where it's like he is in that oeuvre of one of the better American prospects in recent memory, and someone who just dominated college basketball, right, in a really, really impressive way. And so I just want to start with that domination, his offensive skill set. Coop, what do you think his best offensive skill is in terms of translation to the league?
That's a hard question because I think there's 2 or 3, right? I think in today's game, it will be the rebounding. I think he's just like obviously that ties in with his interior scoring, which is another one of the answers. But
All right, I think we should. I think we should. I think we should do this. I think there's a really obvious comp here that is maybe not obvious in a lot of ways, but like to me, statistically in terms of what he does, and this I think it even kind of translates on both ends, and kind of my at least parts of my role expectation for him. Coop, you've had some time to think about this. Have you maybe figured out who this comp might be?
I
Offensive
actually
rebounder who can really pass, a good interior scorer. I told you that this comp is with a jumper. I'm saying that Boozer can shoot. This guy maybe is not necessarily known for his outside shooting. Have you thought about this?
is my I have my own comps, my own forbidden comps. Is this Ben Simmons with a jumper? Is that where we're
It
at?
is not. It's someone
Okay.
historically that we were very low on, but who now you have some very solid opinions of.
Oh, it's gonna eat me alive when you tell me. Um, okay, just tell me. Just tell me. I
He
don't
plays on
gotta.
your favorite team, Coop.
Is it Amen?
No, I think it's Alperen Şengün. I think Alperen Şengün is maybe the closest role comp that I can come up with for Boozer. Now Şengün's had his ups and downs, and I think Boozer is a better player, will be a better player than Şengün, in my opinion. But I think they're similar in that their strengths are this sort of rugged toughness, a lot of patience in the lane. I think there's a little. We'll talk about this. There's a little bit of like he Boozer kind of has a very European game, which actually his dad did too. For this project, because I'm a psycho, I went back and watched Carlos Boozer Duke tape because I was trying to get a feel for Carlos's level of athleticism. Because like in my head, I grew up as a when I was little, I was a Sonics fan when Boozer was on the Jazz. I didn't come to the Jazz until after Boozer had kind of moved on. And in my head, he was like this high flyer, right? I think I had like NBA Jam '07 on my Xbox 360, and like you would just throw him crazy lobs with Darren Williams or whatever. But that's not really who his dad was either. His dad kind of had this more patient, calm European game too. Boozer's very strength based as a creator. He is, very willing to use that physicality, but he also uses a lot of fakes. Shockingly good offensive rebounder despite being pretty ground bound. But I think his best skill, his most translatable skill, is his short roll passing. And his full court pass. Like his passing in general is just, everywhere around the court. Like he is probably the best passing prospect in a couple of years. Something we'll do later when we talk about him in the context of like other, high level picks is talk about that skill in relation to those guys. But in my kind of immediate recollection, probably the best passing prospect since Cade. I just think that his timing, the way I put it a lot in my notes is he's such an efficient passer. You said like he doesn't turn the ball over very much. When he does, you're kind of like that was still the right play. Like at least a quarter of his turnovers, it felt like, or like he put the ball where it needed to be, and his teammate either just didn't catch it or the defense just made a really great play. That happens sometimes when you have the ball all the fucking time. He is so quick as a reader and as a decision maker, and he is the right mix of reactive to where the defense is, but also proactive in terms of trying to manipulate the defense or seeing before he can. Like, especially, I love the short roll passing the most because he's already seeing as he's slipping out of these screens or as he is, leg whipping to hold that space. He's already seeing, is someone coming to tag this backside dunker spot? Are they not? I think it's only going to get better because Duke really only had like 1.5+ outside shooters. That one of those was Cam Boozer. In the league, if you can put like 3 really good shooters and a dunker spot guy around him, all of a sudden, like he's going to be really, really deadly there, in my opinion. And so that's my thought on the most translatable skill, and kind of a comp that I thought of a lot that I feel like gives this a little bit of structure is that I think when people talk about, well, what does he look like as a star? Some people will say Jokic, some people will say Kevin Love. I think a version of Şengün who's just a little bit better in every way is kind of the type of player that makes the most sense for me. Is he a tweener between 4 and 5? Yeah, he is. That's absolutely true, and we will talk about the defense and all the problems that might present. But offensively, I mean, this is a pretty high level prospect in my opinion. So first tell me how that comp sounds to you, and then talk to me a little bit about how you felt about Boozer as a passer.
So the Shingun, I think that's really interesting, and I think that it is really emblematic of very generally. I mean, there's some specific stuff in there, like I think Boozer is much better at handling the ball and handling pressure, but I think that that mainly comes from the fact that he can actually process the floor. And I think that that is the biggest gap between him and Shingun. Shingun is basically reading cutters, big men at the rim. That's it. He cannot make kickouts. And even those interior passes are really slow and have to be set up immediately. If you send a surprise double, he's just screwed. If you send the surprise double at Cam Boozer, he's already he's completely sussed it out, and he's gonna figure it out and get the ball out quickly. I think the other, I mean, this is just another thing where people worried with Shingun that it's like this guy fully relies on beating up smaller guys in the, the Turkish league. They were an import league, and, there was COVID. So everyone was so worried that it's like he's just beating up on bad competition. You kind of see the same worries with Boozer. I think that's a really good comp, actually, just for their general prospect dump. I should have thought of that. But I tend to view him more as a connective passing demon, and I just will never correlate that to what Shingun does, even though now that you've said it, it's like completely clicked in my head. And then you wanted to talk just general offense here?
Yeah, well, I kind of want to start with the playmaking because I do think that's the most like the difference between while there's other differences, especially the jump shot that we'll get into between like him and Shingun or whatever. I think the star outcomes and what might make him a tier above, kind of those lower level all stars and potentially being like a all league, all world potentially type player is the playmaking. And so I kind of wanted to start with that because that's what I think is the most interesting. Whether it be short roll, I think the transition passing is elite, even though Duke played by the end of the year, they were playing very slow. I watched the Arkansas game and a couple other early season games, and comparing how they were playing then to how they were playing against UVA at the end or TCU or whatever, when they're really, really deliberate about their sets and everything. It's different. Partially, I don't think that has a ton to do with Boozer. I think it has a lot more to do with their depth and also their lack of shooting. It's hard to be a great transition team if your shooting is mediocre at this point, or at least maybe not transition team, but it's hard to be a great like high pace team if your shooting is mediocre. But I think the passing is really the special skill, and so I just wanted to get your opinions on what you feel or how you feel about his passing and playmaking through all different types and areas on the floor.
I think it's maybe I don't think that you're exaggerating with how you called him, one of the best passers we've ever evaluated. I put in my notes that he really handles and reads the defense like a point guard. There's not very many of these like point forward types who can really handle and who can really understand how they put pressure on a defense with their unique combination. I think he's one of the quickest processors that we've ever seen. And I think the kind of secret sauce here is that he has some of the best like micro athletic skills of some of the people we've watched. Like some of that, like the hand-eye coordination, some of the best I've ever seen in my life. His reaction time and just ability to get like, and that combined with his hand-eye coordination is one of the elite athletic traits I have ever seen in ever. Like it's ridiculous because he will see you coming. He'll get his hand, like this is a different part of the game, but like kickouts will go out and he'll be like 2 feet from the ball and his hand's instantly out. Like he is there all the time, constantly making reads, constantly seeing stuff. And because of how good his handle is, and because of how refined he is as a reader of the floor, he's able to act as a point guard and also as the big. And we kind of talked about how unique that is with someone last year, and like with Derek Queen, where it's like, oh, he can really handle and really make reads. But Queen was special, and Boozer's like a whole tier above him, because with Queen, it's like, oh, there's some funk there. He can really get into the lane. Boozer can do everything. Boozer can run the pick and roll. He can and he has this perfect understanding of timing that like half of Duke's sets would not work if he was not the one initiating them. They run their whole offense through based off of this one skill. Like they have all these shooters, or they have their one or two shooters, making these constant flares and like coming off a screen, off a pin down, and Boozer hits them at the exact moment in the pocket at perfect timing, like every single time. It's ridiculous. He hits back doors perfectly. He's throwing lobs perfectly. And you can kind of see that very European style in the fact that his playmaking, when he has a vertical threat, is like insane, because he's always has that as like, oh, you've overplayed your hand right up top to to Patrick Ngongba, and we got an easy dunk. You cannot cheat against him. It's incredible.
Yeah, I think that like you said, so much of their offense is built around Boozer gets to make plays. They ran so many sets down the stretch of important games where it's literally just Boozer standing up top, and they're running all it's classic chin stuff, and they're running all these actions off of it. But the nice thing about Boozer is that he is a good enough handler that if you try to put a big guy on him to where he can't just stand up top, he can just beat that guy. And then smaller guys, he's good enough at getting off the ball and getting him down to the post to just kind of beast him, right? Like I do think he's at least a little bit of a matchup nightmare. If you want to try and guard him with your five, he's going to be really good in the DHO game. I think he's going to make enough shots. He can't really beat fives with quickness. That's really, as this will start to transition some into the scoring. The biggest concern with him is just that like he's not quite quick enough or agile enough to just like dust a bigger guy. That's the difference between him and Queen. Not just that Boozer is a considerably better. I like Queen a lot. Queen's special skill was his handle, whereas I think Boozer's is his processing. And like you said, his hands themselves. I don't have like a hand measurement on him. I imagine he just has gigantic mitts. Like some of the balls that he's getting as an offensive rebounder, it feels like he gets like a pinky on and just like pushes it with one finger back to where it needs to go and is able to get it from there. Like he is an unbelievable to the extent that you can see him, like he's not doing this all the time now. He still likes to try to catch and then gather to throw passes, but you could see him start to develop into the type of person who can just kind of grab these one-hand catches on the short roll or on the perimeter and just kind of whip them around without having to really gather the ball in the way, we see like a Jokic do, right? He doesn't have quite the level of like flash or eye manipulation that someone like a Jokic does, or even someone like a Şengün, who I think is a very overrated passer because he throws fancy passes. He doesn't have quite the flash and creativity that those guys has, but he is way more efficient as a decision maker than basically any guy that I've scouted in a while. Like, and he's doing it in all different types. He's throwing off the dribble lobs. He's throwing off the dribble one hand cross court skip passes. He's throwing short roll passes where the ball is in his hands for less than a second, and then it's getting thrown where it needs to go. Now, some of this is that Duke is it's a super well structured offense. Like John Shire's a really good coach, but at a certain point, like he's still making the reads and making the passes. And I think that it'll translate really well to the NBA. And, he's always been a good passer. I don't think it showed as much statistically at the lower levels because he didn't have as many good players around him, but he is an unbelievable. And then this isn't even touching on the special skill, which is he's an elite, like one-hand touchdown passer in full court scenarios. And he combines that with being a pretty darn good defensive rebounder, so with the ability to also grab and go. Now, I don't think he's not a grab and go threat in the way of like he's going to push it down your throat and just go like score by, going really Giannis type downhill. But I do think that he is a competent enough ball handler to bring it up, even against some pressure, and get you into offense or an action or whatever. I think that the pick and roll ball handling is going to take a little bit of work. His answer to every problem on the perimeter right now is power. He just wants to, in the post, he has a lot more kind of footwork and finesse, and he has really good touch. But right now on the perimeter, he wants a screen and then he wants to go hard downhill. He might do one little crossover, and he also likes his cross into a spin back. But he's not like, he doesn't have a super manipulative handle right now. And he also doesn't have he doesn't have a lot of like, I'm gonna play in this tight space pick and roll. He just, if the spacing starts to get too tight, he's just gonna kill his dribble and try and pass to someone. But I think that the passing is so versatile and so high level that I'm almost not that concerned about the advantage creation being not quite to the level. Like, and we'll talk about this, but he and DeBonster are almost like exact opposite offensive players. DeBonster is an elite advantage creator and a very mediocre decision maker, reader of defenses, playmaker type. And Boozer's the opposite, where he's a pretty mediocre advantage creator. Now he can create advantage just by being big and strong and good enough to do things, but he's not like I'm gonna just hit these tween hezzy pulls, or if you step out, then I'm just gonna dust you. He has to be a little bit more creative, but he is so elite and efficient as a passer that I just think wherever he goes, he's gonna find what maybe it's using him as, like I said, like a short roller type guy. Maybe they're using him as a DHO operator. Maybe they're letting him run a lot of second side ball screens. Ideally, he's in a place where he's doing all of these things, and he is getting to make a lot of decisions and play with the ball a lot, and having to go through some of the mistakes, because he should be getting post touches. If they're going to try and guard him with wings, he should be getting post touches. He should be the level of guy that is requiring an OG Anunoby to stop, which is, why the other forbidden comp for him is like a Paolo Banchero in the worst way, right? Where he's a way better passer than Paolo was, but a worse athlete, right? There's always give and take. But the idea is that he's a mismatch nightmare in one way or another. It's either if a big's on him, he's going to pick and pop, or he's going to get enough of an advantage to, create lanes to pass. If you put a small on him, he's going to beast him in the post, and you just hope that you have enough spacing around him to make that work. But what other notes did you kind of want to get into offensively? That's obviously a lot of talking about the playmaking. What else did you kind of want to hit on here?
I do want to get into my kind of forbidden comp, because I actually woke up this morning and I said, thank you to God, because thank God that the Warriors are not bad enough, hopefully, to get a top pick, because this guy kind of gives me like slightly less athletic, more supercharged Iguodala. Like, put this guy in a post split action and it's just, the league is fucking over, right? Does that, like, he's not Draymond, because that's completely ridiculous once we get to the defensive stuff. But this kind of just elite reader of the floor, he can do a little bit of everything. He will punish you on the glass, despite the fact that he's not like Dennis Rodmaning you or 7 feet tall. And he just wins off of, I'm smarter than you, and I will beat you to the spot, and I am better than you. And it's just kind of the end of the world. I think offensively, I mean, the last thing for me is, to me, my favorite of his skills, because I love the fact that he's a big man. Obviously, the passing's incredible. The rebounding stuff. I mean, you talked a little bit about it. He's probably one of the best box out guys ever, at least that we've scouted in like the last, however many years we've been doing this at this point. But the combination of strength, positioning, hands, and just boxing out, and that, a lot of that goes back to hand-eye coordination, reaction time. He is going to beat you to a spot, hold his position, and then he's got the hand-eye coordination, the reaction time to get to wherever the ball goes. It's just, in a league that is so completely centered on winning the possession battle, a guy who is this efficient at not turning the ball over and creating high level advantages. The passing is not just low level, like, oh, I made a pass out to a shooter who was kind of open and he made the shot. This is like real advantage creation passing combined with the offensive rebounding stuff. I mean, this is like the cheat code player offensively that the league is like basically gnashing at the bit for. Guys who create extra possessions, who do not turn the ball over, who clean up possessions on the other end. It's insane. Especially who's an efficient scorer. He's not like Tari Eason, even, who his biggest problem is that he's just like not, he turns the ball over, and sure, he wins you the possession battle because for every one of those turnovers, he's getting a steal and grabbing 3 offensive rebounds, but he's also inefficient. And a guy like Cam Boozer is an efficient scorer at all 3 levels, and he will punish you for making the wrong decision. And the NBA offense is basically just every single possession put defenses in compromising positions because they just exist. These great players just exist. And if you have a guy like Boozer who can punish you for just existing, I think he's going to be even better at the NBA level because of that combination of offensive rebounding, the touch, the scoring, at least on offense. And I think it's really just a super unique combination.
Yeah, I mean, I think unique is the right way to put it, right? He's the type of star we don't see a lot, but I also do think that he is the like you said, the league right now is in the right place for him, where it's super possession oriented. It's big and it's strong, but there's also still mismatches to be hunted. He is physically built for the league in a lot of ways. Let's talk about some of the negatives offensively. The athleticism is a concern. I think that he's still a good finisher. I mean, across multiple years, he's been a good finisher, 65.4% on 309 rim attempts this year. In EYBL, 69.7 on 195 rim attempts. High school as a senior, 69.1 on 188 rim attempts. He had 4 self-created dunks in terms of perimeter drives. He had quite a few self-created in terms of he got a steal and then went and dunked. And then quite a 3 or 4 self-created where he had a post up and he either spun off or used a little shoulder fake and got to the middle and used his big broad hop step to get to the middle. He's an okay like dunker spot athlete, not in terms of going up to get a lob, but like he can like, he's not like barely scraping the rim when he's right underneath the rim. Like he can get up and actually really dunk still. But he's definitely more of a 1-foot athlete. He's clearly more comfortable off one, and he's massive, so that helps. Like, he's just big enough. I bet you he has a plus, I don't know, +3 wingspan would be my guess. Probably 6'8" and a half without shoes, 6'11" to 7-foot wingspan, and these big hands. Like he's pretty massive, and he'll try. Every once in a while he'll get really ambitious. Like he had one against Michigan where he had Yaxel on his hip and he went up and tried to punch on Merez Johnson and got fouled, I think. Or maybe he just missed it. But there's definitely some concerns in terms of the athleticism. Can guys like a Yaxel or like, or like an OG Anunoby or, obviously OG is a super high level guy, right? Like what does it look like against OG? Hopefully you're in a situation where you can scheme up some other guys to do that, and then OG's in help and you're able to figure things out. But I do think that there is some concern that the median wing defenders who are strong enough can bother him enough, right? Like that a Najee Marshall will just shut him down or whatever, right? Like, and if that's the case, things are going to be really tough. And he's going to be much more of a scheme player than a someone who can kind of be the scheme unto himself. So tell me, Coop, how do you feel about the athletic concerns? How much do they scare you, if at all? Just kind of walk me through where you're at with the athleticism and how it affects his offense.
Yeah, I do kind of worry that this is a guy you could throw Dillon Brooks on. And it's like Dillon Brooks is not like this great. He's really good at defending these kinds of guys. These undersized, strong wing defenders who are just great in isolation. And they just hold up. And Yeah, he can still get the pass off, but the passing is so much less valuable if he's not drawing help, right? And at that point, I do think that you can start involving, a lot of these guys, if you start involving Dylan Brooks or you start involving Najee Marshall in screen actions, and I think that's a big part of why he just kind of spams them to some degree at college, is like a lot of these guys, their biggest weakness is throw them into a real screen or even a ghost screen involving a guard, and they are nullified to some degree, right? They lose a lot of their effectiveness because they rely on perfect positioning and strength. And if he can even get a half step, he can kind of use his momentum to keep them off of him. Um, but you do worry that that gets way harder at the NBA level. That NBA defenders are just on average way stronger than college defenders. And I mean, the biggest worry is like the Virginia game where he was, being guarded by Ungana. Ugana Onyenso. I hope I didn't mispronounce that. And he had how many blocks on Boozer?
Yeah, like on Boozer himself, like 4 or 5. I mean, yeah, was kind of had him swallowed up for a lot of the game.
Yeah, it was like Boozer beat him a few times. Like he was out there throwing up fakes, and he had him in the ISO, and but even like down the stretch, Onyenso just had his number.
And that's one of the games where I think it most stood out to me that, like I said, his solution to every problem right now is power. He wants to go. He tried to go through Onyenso a lot instead of being able to beat him with a little bit more craft. Not that he's completely uncrafty; he has quite a bit of craft, but his right now he wants to take that square peg and jam it in every round hole when he's on the perimeter. If he has a small guy on him, he wants to try and kind of go through their chest and hopefully pick up a foul. Now he's a good free throw rate guy, but he's not like a crazy elite free throw tank. Like 52.4 free throw rate is good. That's not like best we've ever seen. I think I mentioned this, but Ben Simmons at like a 76 or something like that. Like, he's not consistently able to win in other ways. If Duke really needs a bucket, it's sometimes tough for him to be like, I'm just going to go get one. He is really good at manipulating defenses, and especially defenses in rotation. He's not great at being the guy that has to create against a set defense. He has to be on offenses that are going to let him make decisions while actions are happening, or put him in action to be going downhill with slight advantage. I'm not sure that he's going to be a consistent enough downhill advantage creator. Now, that's not the end of the world. Again, that's something that like Şengün does, but like Jokic, not like some crazy good downhill advantage creator. Jokic is a great pick and pop guy. He also has really developed like this kind of floater mid-range touch. Could Boozer do that? Potentially. He doesn't really have much of a mid-range game right now. I think he has good touch. I don't think he has touch quite to that level. Very few do. Obviously, Jokic is one of one. But do you feel like this is a big cap on his ceiling, or do you think he has enough other things that he can kind of overcome this?
I think if he only had like what if he had like another major weakness, I think I would be a lot more worried. But we kind of talked about philosophically, like where's the special skill that this guy brings, and I think Boozer legitimately has two like top tier special skills in the rebounding and the passing, and I think the interior scoring is really good. And is that kind of capped? Yes, but if he can fully learn how to leverage the other stuff, if he can, leverage the passing more, and kind of, I do think that the only weakness to his passing is he's a bit of a I'm in pass mode guy, or I'm in score mode, and he will kind of sometimes just set his mind, and then he'll have 4 guys around him. It's like, I'm just going to go up and try and get the free throw. And it's like, if you leverage the pass a little bit more, you could get the and one, because you're only going to be guarded by one guy, right? But part of that also has to do with Duke's scheme, right? Where they only have one good shooter, and there's no real kick out threat. If you put him on an NBA roster with 3 real shooters, or even 2 real shooters, like obviously my mind, but like if he had Reed Shepherd on the perimeter, and he was like even just faked a pass to Reed Shepherd, now he's got a wide open layup. And I think that that's something that'll come with real NBA minutes. And as he sort of adjusts, and I think I mean, like, your body's not fully developed at this age. He's not a fully developed person. And he's still got some room to grow. Obviously, you worry that he's already so strong. But if he has any more kind of physical development in any real way, I mean, this is a guy who could be flinging around the Dylan Brookses of the world and, shaking, like, using screens. If he can still dribble, maintain his dribble while he's this big, I mean, this guy could be a huge problem offensively. So I guess there's kind of worries, but especially with guys who are already this good and have so many special skills, I want to give them the benefit of the doubt because everyone gets better. Everyone gets better as they get older, unless you're like Bull or something, I guess. But
yeah, no, I mean, I think that's a fair point. I'm not a biomechanics expert, but I do think that there's probably a little bit of low-hanging fruit in terms of getting him a little bit more flexible. Like, he's so stiff in his hips right now, and specifically in his core, that I don't think that's like a completely unchangeable thing. He might not be able to get like crazy more bouncy or anything, but I think he can get a little bit more fluid into, like, he already flashes that when he's going, like when he's spinning, especially if he's spinning back to his right shoulder. He's just not he doesn't always have it in terms of like when his body is facing the basket. So if you can get him just a little bit more bend, he can maybe be pretty deadly out of a jab step game or whatever. The last thing I want to talk about is the jump shot, because I do think that the difference, the ceiling is in some ways going to be about his advantage creation. The floor, in my opinion, is going to be about how good of a shooter he can be. Because if he's really a plus shooter in the league, even if he's not like a movement shooter, then he's really, really tough to guard. And he's also going to be good enough at other things that you can, he won't be Sabonis. He'll get to be a little bit more than that. But if he's not able to make shots, then there will be some real questions about positionality and just how good he can be. This year, he shot 57.5% on all jumpers, 62.2% on catch and shoot shots, 47.8% on off the dribble shots. These are all effective field goal rates, not like true field goal percentage. His percentage did drop on guarded catch and shoots. He is a little bit affected by contests. He likes to hop into it. His lower body mechanics are okay. He gets a low enough, right? The power generation is good. Sometimes I feel like his feet are a little bit off. Like, he likes to offset his feet, and sometimes when guys like to do that, I feel like it's a little bit easier for them to slide. Like, if you're already like in an angle where it's your pinky toe that's pointed at the rim, it's a little bit easier to get yourself either turned or get your feet pushed out a little bit more than you want them to, rather than being truly square to the rim. I don't think any shooting coach is going to be like, we're going to make you square to the rim all the time necessarily. I just think, getting a little bit more consistent in his footwork. And, he, like I said, he always wants to catch and drop and do like this drop instead of being already bent. I'm guessing that's something that will get worked out. The biggest concern for me is, one, when he misses one, he doesn't feel like taking the next one. He's not yet confident enough in it. Now, this was a problem with Flag, but Flag got past this by the end of his freshman year. Boozer still has it in important big games. Boozer is still passing up some open shots early in the clock. He's got to get to a point where he's comfortable enough that, like, if you're going to give him 8 feet of space, like, he's just going to shoot it. Like, no league shooter gets guarded at the elbows. If he's getting guarded at the elbows, it's going to be really hard for him. Because, again, he doesn't have that type of like transition athleticism like a Ben Simmons had, or a young career LeBron obviously had, to like get away with getting guarded at the elbows without being a 5. And again, if he's Domantas Sabonis, that's not like he can be that and probably a better version of that because he's a better passer than Sabonis, but that's more of a ceiling cap. The other thing I don't like is he has this negative pull. So instead of going up with, taking his elbow through and finishing here, he likes to flip it back towards his face as he's going up. And so there's just a little bit of an extra motion. Okay. You think of it like a lot of two motion shooters do that, where they get it up to here. And then as they're jumping in the air, they reach their apex and they fling out. But he's not like a true two motion jump shooter, but he does have that flick back towards his face before he goes up. And he does this on his free throws too. So even on his free throws, he's not getting loaded and staying loaded. I'm not sure if that's something that teams are going to feel like they need to fix. He still gets a good arc on it. I think he has good natural touch. I'm not super concerned like whether or not he's going to be a okay shooter. I think he'll make some, but whether or not he's enough of a shooter to be like a gravity well is a question. The biggest hole in the Kevin Love comps is that by the end of, by the time he was on championship teams, Kevin Love was an elite catch and shoot shooter. They were even running some plays for him to hit some motion shots here and there. It was never like a Duncan Robinson or anything, but if his feet were set and he was, stepping into it, he was probably going to knock it down. Can Boozer get to that level? I think there's a world. I also think that he's going to have to get comfortable enough shooting unders. If they're going to try to guard him with bigger, stronger guys who want to go under so they don't get beat, he's got to get to a point where he's okay stepping into that shot and pulling it. There was a little bit of that. Like I said, he took an okay, like 46 dribble jump shots for a Duke player this year is not bad. Like that's not near as many as like Flag took, but it's not bad. Way more than Con Knippel took, and he's having like the best shooting season of any rookie of all time. So, I think there's enough there to believe in it, but I do want to acknowledge that if he is like out of the league, it'll have a lot less to do with his athleticism and a lot more to do with his jump shot. If he's not making shots, it's going to be tough for him. If he makes shots, he will at the very least be a positive offensive player. If he's not making shots and the athleticism really caps him, there is a fairly low floor here. I don't think it's like truly like bust out of the league bad, but there's at least a little bit of concern there for me. Do you have any thoughts on the jump shot? If not, why don't you just tell us a little bit? Give us like kind of an encapsulation, floor ceiling offensively for Boozer.
I think you handled the shot great. You're better at the minutia of jump shooting than I am. I think the thing with Boozer is I think his floor is ridiculously high, even if the shot's just like fake real. I think big guys who can handle, pass, rebound at the level he can offensively, I think that ceiling is ridiculously high, like sub all-star levels of value just on the offensive end, which I think would be ridiculous. And I think at his top end, this is like I hesitate to put like a cap on it even, because on the right team, this guy could be hitting jump shots, bringing the ball up, crossing dudes, hitting them with a little shoulder bump, and then getting the LeBron foul call where he initiates the contact and then goes to the free throw line, 8 times a game, even though it's absolute bullshit. Like this is just, there's a world where that kind of guy develops on the offensive end because he's already got such a high floor with these special offensive skills. I think median, this is still like an all-star level player, like offensively. We'll talk about the defense here in a second, but there's with guys who are this high feel and special, I think the floor is usually a lot higher than we tend to think. And Boozer is that to a T, to my mind.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. I think the floor offensively is probably like, there's two ways to look at it. There's a floor that's like a Domantas Sabonis floor, where it's like he is a good productive player, but not necessarily a winning one all the time, and that does tie into the defense a little bit. And then there's more like what I think is more, his quote unquote floor, which is like a rotation. You mentioned an Iguodala late career. Offensively, a late career Iguodala type, where he's like, can handle and does a little bit of beasting in the paint and makes some, open corner shots, but is not quite an advantage creator, nor is he an elite shooter. I think the ceiling is best offensive player in the league. I'm going to go that far and say that. I think there's a world that in his career at some point, Cameron Boozer is an MVP. because we're just like very few people um, create good shots in the way he does. Median outcomes, I think, I've said this, but I think a little bit worse version of what Şengün provides, even if he does it a little bit differently, is where he's low tier all star to not quite an all star, probably not really in all NBA conversations, but maybe could sneak in there. If you wanted to say the name Julius Randle, the comp that all fours get. There's a little bit of like late career Blake Griffin. Like we could say all these names that come up all the time with these kind of quote unquote weird tweeners. But the truth is the ceiling is special. Like the ceiling is this is the best passer in the league. Because again, he's the best passing prospect, in my opinion, that we've had in a while. I might even say he's maybe even a better passing prospect than Cade. They're just different. Like Cade is a point guard, and so that's different. But could like is the actual forbidden Camp Boozer comp like Tyrese Halliburton? Like probably not, but like there's at least a little bit of like he might just figure shit out. Like maybe he just actually does have like all-time touch, and he just is actually making like tween step back threes and also throwing full court passes and cross court skips. And like I don't want to limit him in any way. I just don't think that's fair. He's just too smart. He's too good. And he, again, despite being kind of weird and under athletic, he scored almost 23 points efficiently in 40-minute college basketball games. He's averaging like 0.7 points per minute. That's crazy. That's when you add on top of that he's an elite passer. I mean, so I don't want to limit him. Let's talk about the defense, and then we can kind of talk about overall thoughts in terms of comparing him to more recent guys, where maybe we think he is. I thought the defense was really rough. I'm really concerned when I think about him at the highest ends of what he can be defensively. Now, if he makes shots, this is less of a concern. Now, that sounds counterintuitive, but if he doesn't have to be your 5, this is not really a problem for me. He is a better defender than the likes of like a Luka or those types of guys, in that he is at least a good rebounder, which again I think he's very similar to Şengün defensively. He's at least a good rebounder. He has good hands to every once in a while get steals, get some blocks you don't expect him to get, but he's not massive. Like he will be a worse defender than a comp that I almost brought up a couple times, like a Jokic, right? Like he's not as big as Jokic, not as able to kind of impact things in that way. I think he'll do okay guarding like bigger post guys. If you want to try and beast him with like an Embiid, he'll probably do okay, but then he's not gonna be able to contest their shots. Like he's just not big enough. And then he just really can't move on the perimeter. Like he is really, really stiff. Now, again, I think that flexibility can get better, but I mean, Virginia hunted him like crazy. And he's also just not impactful as the low guy. Like he's not going to be a secondary rim protector either. That's what he's going to have to do at times. But I think he either has to be a 4 that you're going to let get out on the floor and say, get beat, but don't get beat giving up 3, make him go to the rim to our rim protector, and then be smart enough to peel off. And if they throw a bad pass, you can get a hand on it, make some plays. Like he is smart. I think he can avoid being a complete disaster, but he is probably going to be someone that gets attacked all the time. And I just think that's just what it is. Like he's also not going to provide a ton of value and help. Could he be an okay nail defender? Maybe, but his closeouts are awful. Like, the person he reminded me most of defensively was Jake LaRavia, who obviously I like quite a bit, but has his foibles there. Am I wrong here? Am I missing something defensively? Is there anything else you wanted to hit on with that, Coop?
I thought the positioning was good, but it's almost like too good at times, right? Where he is so willing to, like, he's standing right near the rim. He's got his guy boxed out. He's in such good rebounding position. It's like, okay, I'm not going to just put my hand up or like kind of help here. And I think that kind of shows up in he only commits 2 fouls a game, which is per 40, which is fucking ridiculous, dude. Like, I get it. We don't want to foul and we want to be efficient here, but like, you got to do something. You are in help position. Just put a hand up. I'm not asking you to go block it. I'm not asking you to jump and lose your positioning. Just put your hand up. Your reaction time, your hand-eye coordination is so good. I trust you to do that. I know you're not going to go full JoJo Tugler. I don't like you're not going to foul out of the game. Just do something, please, dear God. Um, and it's a bit. I'm less impressed with the defensive rebounding because it's kind of like um, what Alabama does with their fours, where it's like they had Noah Clowney especially, and it was like, wow, he rebounds like at an insane rate on defense. It's like, yeah, because he doesn't fucking jump. He doesn't help at the rim ever. He's always just on the ground boxing out. Um, and Boozer just it really bugs me. It really bothers me because it's not even. And then his motor, he'll get beat and he'll stay in the play, but he's often like, I don't want to be the body language guy, but he will kind of give up sometimes and just like kind of not pout, but he's like, what are we doing here, guys? He throws up his hands and then it's everyone else's problem. And that's fine because Duke's entire team is weak side rim protectors. You have Dame Sar playing the two, and he could come clean up your mess. But it's like he's not Flag in that way. And I think that's the biggest thing for me is it's like Flag's floor was defensively. This guy is going to come in and just murder everyone. And you don't have that same floor here with Boozer. I get you can't jump. I get your feet are slow. I get you're stiff. Just do something, dude. Please, dear God.
Yeah. The devil's advocate here is that Duke is like the best defense in the country, and he has contributed to that. And again, legitimately, like good hands and an ability to get steals. And every once in a while, like while he's not a great athlete, I actually think his straight line first step is not bad in terms of making a break on the ball. It's not great with the ball in terms of exploding out of dribble moves, but in terms of like every once in a while, like he'll just go get a lazy pass. Especially, I think he kind of has worn down a little bit as the season has gone on. But he's been, early on, he was really making some plays in passing lanes and really getting out and getting a dunk here and there. But I'm just not convinced that he is a like super. I'm not convinced that that he's a big part of their defense or that he will be able to be a consistently impactful defender in any way in the league. The the ceiling for me defensively is, non-problem, and that's a concern, right? Like if that's your ceiling is not awful, I mean, now that's great to an extent that he can be, like you said, he's kind of in the right place. His ground coverage is just really bad. Like he's smart and he kind of knows where to be, and his threat assessment's really good. You mentioned that he boxes out instead of helping a lot, which is true, but I also think he's pretty good at knowing when to just box out and just be like, this guy is there enough that it's better for me, instead of trying to go block this shot, it's better for me to just get in box out position and say, hey, Caleb Foster is going to make him miss or he won't. But if he misses, then this guy on the backside is not going to get a crackback rebound. Like there is at least a little bit of, feel for that kind of thing. But yeah, I just, how big of a limiter on his ceiling is it? I don't think much. Like I don't think he is a considerably worse defender than like I think this person's got overrated recently. Like I don't think he's a considerably worse defender than like a Shea. Shea gets steals, but Shea's not like a super impactful defender. Now, the difference between Shea and Cam is that if Shea had not been this good of an offensive player, he probably could have ramped the defense up and been a competent player in the league anyways. Like Cam doesn't necessarily have that to the same extent, but like if he reaches star outcomes, I don't think the defense is like Trae Young levels of problematic or even Luka levels of problematic, honestly. He's just kind of he will just kind of be there, and you will have to build a scheme that is competent enough around him. Now, I think you can do that, and we'll talk about some fits that I think would be really fun here in a second, but that's kind of where I'm at. Coop, let's talk about. We obviously have three things to talk about. We got to talk about where we feel like we will probably end up with him, and we will have a pod that'll probably be fairly short, would be my guess, where we will debate these top three guys. But I do think that Just kind of give me your preliminary guess for where you're going to be. Then we are going to have to talk about how he compares to some other recent high-end prospects, and then we'll talk about some fits we like. But first, where do you feel like you're going to end up with him? Where's your gut tell you that you will how you will want to rank him?
I think deep in my heart, I think I'm gonna have him 1. I think the multiple special skills alongside I think the defense in today's game, especially I think your point about if he can just shoot and spread out the floor a little better and just like control the defensive boards, that's for some teams just being able to wrangle 30% of the defensive rebounds is going to be more valuable than having a 4 who's going to come around and help everywhere. Like some teams just desperately need that. And they have athletic guys at other spots and can work that scheme in a very real way. And I think the fact that Boozer is like very clearly the different one out of the 3 top guys, like obviously Peterson and DeBonsa are going to be very different in how they do their scoring and what they do and that kind of stuff. But like the fact that there's 2 bigger scoring wings at the top of this class kind of it's not as special or as necessary in a lot of ways as the kind of stuff that Boozer will give you. It's kind of the difference between like obviously it's a different level, but it's like the difference between Trey Johnson and like Con Knipple, where like Con is like maybe he was like a slightly worse college player, but the tertiary and secondary skills that he gives you on the floor are so much more valuable than just like I shoot better than you from everywhere on the floor. Like just making these constant good decisions is such a huge like heads up above other people that I don't think that DeBonsa and Peterson have it to the same level, even though they are special in their own way.
Yeah. My feeling is pretty strongly that this will end up being the number 1 guy in my class, though I'm not sure that he will be in his own tier. I'm also not sure if it'll be either of those other 2 that are up there with him as I've been watching, but we will see. I think this might be a year that I get a little bit spicy with some of the takes, but we'll see. All right, I want to talk about teams where I want to play. I have an obvious number 1. Let's get him in Dallas, man. Listen, does Dallas deserve this? Does Dallas deserve this? No. But give me Cooper Flagg and Cam Boozer on the same team. I don't care. You could start Lively. You could start Gafford. It doesn't matter to me. I don't care. Give me that duo at the 3-4. Now they need I guess Kyrie's still there. Kyrie, I guess I do think that something that will be important for Boozer is playing with a good guard, a guard that can make shots off the pick and roll, so that you can hopefully get him in short roll actions. And so, as I'm looking, I'm either looking for teams that have that, or teams that might get that, or where they could build around Boozer. The Nets don't really have that, but maybe they can just build around Boozer. I would love to see him in Indiana. That would be insanity. If Indiana, what a coup for Indiana to trade to get this pick back. If it ends up being number 1 or 2 and they get Cam Boozer on this team, I don't care. You move Siakam to the 3, he can guard fine there. Nesmith to the 2. Or move Siakam to the 5, I guess. Whatever, figure it out. But I mean, Boozer and Halliburton would be an insane duo. It would be the best passing duo maybe I've ever seen. Obviously, I like him in Utah. I'm not sure that's really a good fit for him. But maybe I'm like, are there any other fits that you really look at Tankathon that you really like?
I mean, the Pacers, I think they have some weird stuff, but it would be hilarious if they, in theory, traded this pick if it was at 5 to 8 for Zubats, and then also kept the pick and it was Cam Boozer, and now you run Halliburton, Siakam, Cam Boozer, Zubats, and it's just like, oh, well, they're actually better than when they made the finals.
Is that the best passing team of all time in terms of
I think there's a very real argument.
I mean,
yeah,
Boozer, Zubac, obviously Halliburton is like elite, and I think Boozer in a couple of years will be elite. Zubac is at least good as a big, maybe not elite.
Mm-hmm.
Siakam as a 3 is a perfectly reasonable pass. Aaron Nesmith is the only bad passer in that group. I mean, that's there's obviously some shooting questions there potentially, but Siakam's been shooting well. I mean, the best fit for Boozer to be like a legend would be to go to Indiana, because like he'd help Halliburton as he's coming back from his Achilles, like, you know, share some of the load. And then as Halliburton starts to age out, like he'd age in, like, you know, probably get a ring in there somewhere. I mean, that would be for Boozer. That's like the idea. And right now, for what it's worth, they are in the pole position to win the lottery. Obviously, a lot of things can happen, and the top 3 teams will all have the same odds, but they are, before you hit simulation, if you just log on to Take-a-thon, the Pacers are listed at 1. So that would be an all-time one. Anyone else stand out for you?
I do think him and Sar would be disgusting offensively. I think defensively you run into a lot of issues. Sar's been not good, I guess is the nice way to put it. He just had 83 dropped on him 2 weeks ago. Like, in theory, I think defensively you could get something to work there, but like a bunch of wings with length, and you have a guy like Boozer orchestrating the whole thing, throwing up lobs to Alex Sarr. Hey, Bilal, here's an open, you know, wing 3. Just make that, please. You know, here's, you know, Trey Johnson in the corner, easy money. I think he could be the key to kind of unlock what they've got going on. Obviously, I mean, they have Trey, they have Anthony Davis. So
those are the real reasons that the Wizards, if they didn't do their nonsense at the trade deadline, I would have been like, hell yeah, like that's great. Let it be a young core, let it be bad for 2 more years, but then, you know, kind of slowly start to become something. But they got impatient, and I don't need to see him play with the geriatric corpse of Anthony Davis and you know, no longer good Trae Young. Like that's no. If it was just Trae Young, I'd maybe be a little bit more okay. But he's not been a good enough shooter really, where you got to worry about blitzing the pick and roll, honestly. So I'm not really sure that's necessarily what you're hoping for. But that's why that would be tough for me. If it was just, if you were like Sark, Koulibaly, Trey Johnson, I don't know. That's really it, I guess. But if it's just those guys adding Boozer, and then hopefully, you know, 1 more year to be bad and get another high draft pick, I'd be with you. But I'm not really sure with this current Wizards group that's something that I'm hoping to see.
My last one would be the Grizzlies. Just getting him in next to, I mean, if they can ever stay healthy, they're a fun group of guards that aren't named Ja. But even like him and Ja is kind of fun. Like just him screening and then getting the ball, and it's like, oh, hi, I'm Ja Morant in the mid-range. Here's an Iverson cut. Okay, looks like you're open, buddy. Like there could be some really fun stuff there with them. Him and Edie kind of sounds like just like bullshit, but like that'd be fun. Like,
no, for what it's worth, no one. I bet you no one would be a better passer to Edie in the league than Cam Boozer. High low.
Oh, yeah.
Pick and pop duck ins, like whatever it's going to be, like he'd just be like a monster passer to Edie. And so that would be great defensively. That's a pretty flammable group, but maybe you can figure something out to just, I mean, because Wells and Coward can both guard pretty well on the perimeter. Their non-jaw guards can all guard pretty well. That would be a fun, and that would be an ideal one in some ways, because you'd feel like hopefully this is a group that has maybe a little bit of time and flexibility to build something with around Boozer. And it's not, you know, it's kind of, the Pacers are like, we're taking Boozer as like the cherry on top, versus the Grizzlies would be taking Boozer as like, okay, this is our next foundation around, you know, with a couple, you know, I think Coward's going to be probably like a sub-type all-star player. I think some people are maybe overrating his ceiling. Like he's already 23 years old, but you know, he'll be a good player, and Wells I think is a good player. Like there's guys on that. Even Edie, if he could stay healthy, is like an okay player. I'm not the highest on him by any means, but perfectly reasonable NBA player. And so, you know, that would be a really fun group for sure.
Yeah, I think that sort of begs my question: is there any team in the world where this guy is a bad fit?
So I think that's a great question. I do think there's a couple, and it's specifically teams that either don't have bigs that I think work with him, or don't have guards that I think work with him. Like I do think that he's kind of specific in that you want him to have a guard. Now, like my concern with the Grizzlies is with a healthy jaw. I'm not convinced he's a great fit. Now, if he's a true plus pick and pop big, then I think he'd be fine. But he wouldn't get to play in the short roll as much. Jaw isn't really a spacing threat, which is a concern. Even Dallas, I have that concern. Like, I just think that him and Cooper Flag is so fun that I'm like, I'm willing to overlook that. Utah, I think, is an interesting one. Obviously, now they have Jaren, it's a little different, but that would kind of be ideal if Walker Kessler wasn't in the picture. And it was like, okay, Lowry at the 3, Boozer at the 4, and Jaren at the 5. And we have like a pick and pop, we have 2 pick and pop bigs. We can really space 5 out, and we'll just get Cam Boozer in these sets going towards the rim with 4 shooters around him. I think that would be like a fine fit. Atlanta, I think, would be a tough fit. I do. Like, that's a team that just doesn't have a lot of shooting. I do think he needs to be on a team with some shoot, even though I think he's a good enough shooter to be a spacer. You don't want him to be the spacer. You want him to have guys around. Now, I say that maybe he's a good enough passer that he can play in bad spacing and just find cutters anyways. Like, what does he look like in Charlotte, where I don't really trust their defense? What does he look like in Portland, where it's all about like these rugged drivers? Like, I do think there are some fits that I'm not like enthused about, but I think you've convinced me a little bit that maybe he isn't as fit specific as I thought he might be. Does that feel right to you, or do you feel like there is maybe still a little bit of fit concerns for you?
I think that sounds a bit right. There's obviously some issues, but I think that the offense is so good that you just figure it out. I think he's the kind of guy who offensively is just, he unlocks so many other kinds of players that, like, if you put him on the Bucks, like, are they a real team in the East all of a sudden if Giannis is healthy, even though all of their players are just bullshit players other than like him and Ryan Rollins and Giannis? Like, does he make Kyle Kuzma a slightly more winning basketball player? Does he make, all these guys who are just not good slightly like good enough, and like kind of raise the floor of these other guys with how good his feel is? I don't know. I think there's a chance that that's true. And I think it really, I don't know. I think he's awesome. I think he's going to be awesome. I think even in Atlanta, it's like, hey, you're going to throw 15 full court baseball passes a game to Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Jonathan Kuminga. Go wild. Like, okay, he'll figure it out.
That is a bit of a question for me. Like, how does he look on a team that wants to like really pace it up? Like, could he, like, is he just a good enough like trail shooter and full court passer that he works there? Like, because I don't think he can really like run the floor as the big, right? Like, that's not really who he is. So I do think there's some question to me about like how much does he monopolize what you're like, how much of what you're going to do has to be about him, and how much gets to be about other players. But I think you're right. I just think I'm just overthinking. That's not really that's not enough of a concern to be a problem. And so I just, let's talk about him in the context of some of the other top guys that we've talked about. I know, Coop, you got to go. Well, actually, I guess you still have a little bit of time, but
I have like 10 minutes. So
yeah. So I do want to talk about him a little bit in the context of top guys. Okay, Cooper Flag, I think, is an interesting question. 2024, there's not really anyone who's even close. My number one guy that year was Isaiah Collier, and Matas Buzelis was 2. So not really. 2023, I don't think Boozer, I don't think he's a Wemby caliber guy. Is he near the level of like an Amen for me? I think that's a fair question. And then 2022, Paolo and Chet. I think he is. I don't know. Where are you at with him? Kind of in the. And then 2021, I believe, was Cade. I was doing drafts then, but I can't find my big board. So I'll look that up. Where do you feel like he kind of ranks in terms of a recent memory of top prospects?
I mean, obviously you don't just want to go like, oh, hey, Duke, massive Duke guy, and point really hard at it. But I feel like he's on that Flag Amen level as far as prospects for me, where it's like they're just kind of so special that they're infallible in some way. I think he's got kind of similar concerns. If he was slightly more mobile defensively or had like a little bit more juice on that end, like I don't know, I'd like him more than those guys. I think there's like legitimately super special stuff here. He's just so obvious in a lot of ways that like I really value, and I think that the modern NBA really values, even though like the teams that really value it are not going to be the ones picking. But like, if the Rockets had magically got the second overall pick or the first overall pick, they'd pick him. Like I don't even think it would be close. Teams like Detroit would pick him in a heartbeat. Smart teams. I think the Cavs would snatch him up and just be like, I don't care. We got to win the possession battle. That's what matters. Like good teams value players like this who are just good. And I think somebody might overthink it, and there might be some stuff, but I think he's that flag level guy. I think he's this next. I think he's truly like not generational, but that step just below.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think I'd probably put him on the level of probably a little bit below like Cade, but on the level of Evan Mobley, on the level of Paolo and Chet, of Amen, and I had Scoot in that tier too. I should be realistic. Amen and Scoot, and then Con Knipple are all types of guys that I've kind of had on that level where it's like I think there's some real high end star, and he's probably even a touch above where I had those guys, but a little bit below. Truthfully, I had Cade and Wemby and Flag all kind of in what I consider my top tier. And so he's below those guys. Wemby was obviously a little bit different, but not much. Again, like I do think more than a Knipple, more than a Paolo or Chet, more than Amen, I can see this guy being the best player in the world. So I do think he's kind of in that weird median of like almost between tiers, but that's kind of where I'd be. He's not a top 5 prospect or like ever or anything, but he's of the last few years, he's a top of as long as I've been doing this, he's top 5. Probably Cade. So it'd be Wemby 1, Coop 2, Cade 3, little bit of a gap. Boozer somewhere in the next couple, with Evan Mobley and Paolo probably kind of all in that mix. So really, really high level prospect in my opinion. Coop, this has been great. Are there any other Cam Boozer thoughts that you need to get off your chest?
He's awesome. I mean, that's about it. I think don't overthink it. I think he's like he's kind of the epitome of the philosophy I've been developing the last few years, where it's like just don't overthink the guys who very obviously have the special skills.
Yeah,
and I think that's Boozer here.
100%. And specifically, I'll go as far as to say that special passing to me is probably the most important skill. If you can combine it with some modicum of scoring that will warp the defense, if you're a special passer, then the rest is the rest. Like, I think we've seen that play out time and time again, that the best players, the most impactful players in the league tend to either be the freakiest of freaky athletes or the best passers. And when it comes to win and processors and overall feelers for the game and everything, when it comes to winning at the highest level, I lean on the passing more so. Like there's a reason that I would take the Nuggets or I'd take even the Spurs. It's not like Wemby's a special passer, but Wemby has really high feel for who he is. I take those types of teams over the Timberwolves when it comes to winning championships. Like I just think that there's a little bit more verve there if you can be that type of passer. And so I think Boozer's high-end outcomes are really, really high. But this has been great. The next pod we'll be talking about AJ Debansa. I believe that's how it's said. I feel bad if I get his name wrong, but I will look it up, make sure I have it right before our next pod. But I've watched one game of his in which he played very well against a Texas team that was all about trying to not foul him. They're like, he can score, but we can't foul him, basically was their game plan. And He was really, really impressive in that game, despite being shorthanded. So I'm excited to talk about him. We'll talk about Peterson a little bit later, and then we'll talk about all of them, and then we're on to the wider breadth of the draft. This will be an interesting class. I think as I've been starting to kind of dip my toes into a little bit more. I think there's a lot of weird discourse as always. Sadly, draft Twitter is just completely a joke now, which sucks. It sucks because that also makes it way harder to grow this show and like get people to listen. It used to be that we would have 70 built-in listeners because they would just see us tweet it and they click on it immediately. But whatever. Anyways, enough ranting from me. For Coop, you actually, I need to stop saying our ads. You're not on Twitter anymore. But for Coop, this was great. Give us a like, rating, review. If you're watching on YouTube, like and subscribe. Hopefully, you guys are enjoying the YouTube thing. I think it's been successful. Coop does a great job with all the thumbnails and such, and so that's been fun for us. And this has been the Upside Swings NBA Draft Podcast. We hope we hit our ceiling. Thank you.